Scott Morrison's entered the last week of the election campaign with a controversial plan to allow first home buyers to dip into their superannuation to get into the property market. However, some industry leaders believe it's adding fuel to the fire in the housing market, driving up property prices across the country. Joining us live is the Chief Executive at Industry Super Australia, Bernie Dean. Bernie, thank you for your time. What do you make of this policy? Will it have a material impact on the housing market?
Yes, it will, and we've had the Minister this morning concede as much. She joins a long line of renowned economists and leaders from within her own political party that know that by giving people access to their superannuation to buy a house, that the first thing that will happen is that there will be huge spikes in house prices. Our modelling suggests that in Sydney that could be as much as $100,000 on an average home, and that in capital cities across the nation, we're talking about house spikes of between 9 and 15%. That is why people are saying this is a bad idea. It won't improve housing affordability, but it comes with a huge price tag down the track. And that is, even for those people that don't use the scheme, industry funds, along with any other type of super fund, will find it hard to deliver the same sorts of returns that they have over the last few decades, and that means smaller nest eggs for all Australians.
So the government argument there is that they've built that into the policy in that once you've taken the money out, when you sell the property, you have to contribute that money plus the capital gains back into your industry super fund, or your super fund, whether it's industry or not, I should say. Is that a legitimate safeguard, do you think?
Oh, I don't think there's really any safeguards around this policy. I think, as we heard from Minister Hume, this is a wing and a prayer. This is appealing to people who, unfortunately, are really struggling to find their way into the housing market at this stage. And to give them access to superannuation is going to set them and the nation up on a very difficult road. We've got increasing interest rates. We've got people that are, women especially, that are retiring with less. This is going to do very little for them, and it's going to have a huge price tag for the whole nation. This idea of a clawback is a fantasy, I think, and most people can see through that. When you pay more for a house today, the next house that you want to buy isn't going to be cheaper. It's going to be more expensive because that's what people do. We heard Minister Hume make the point about the boomers downsizing. They're going to be getting super profits out of their houses in Sydney and Melbourne over the next little while if this policy is put into practice, and it's going to come at the expense of their children and grandchildren that are going to be paying the higher prices.
Fundamentally, the money in any person's superannuation account does belong to them. It is money that they've earned. How is it any different to have them put that money into their home, their own asset, as opposed to handing that money over to a super fund that then invests it themselves and then they take the profit off it in the meantime?
People have forgotten, it seems, what super was set up for. 30 years ago, we had bipartisan support around the idea that we had to save for our future as generations age. Now, that's going to make sure that people have access to money independent of the pension that gives them a quality of life in retirement that they ordinarily wouldn't have if they weren't forced to save. That somehow has been kind of tossed aside because of somebody thinks that they can pick up a few votes here and there. This is not a good idea for the future of our country. We've had 30 years of commitment to the idea of a national savings pool where people get access to a nest egg after working so many years. This is going to really take a lot of steam out of that system, and it's walking away from the idea that we're going to take responsibility for ourselves as we age, and we're all just going to end up on the pension. And guess what that means for people who are still working? It means higher taxes.
Bernie Dean, thank you so much for your time, Chief Executive at Industry Super, there on this major policy announcement from the Liberal Party in the last week of the campaign.